So I'm delighted to have Michael Owen in studio. He has a new book out, Michael Owen, Reboot, My Life, My Time. How are you?
I'm grand, how are you?
I'm very well. Interview number 843 of the day.
No, it's great. I mean, I pop over to Ireland a fair bit, mainly for the horses, though.
Oh, yeah?
You know, horse sales, horse races and things like that. But, no, it's nice to pop over and talk about something else and, of course, meet you guys.
What's your track of choice? The Curragh, Leopardstown, where do you head?
Well, I mean, my horse, Brown Panther, won the Irish St. Ledger at the Curragh, so that's obviously going to keep a special place in my heart. Special
memories there, and this book obviously goes through a very, very special career. It's your second autobiography. The first one was, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
This is a very different book, I feel.
Oh, this is a proper autobiography. The other one was, I had my arm twisted to do it. It was my agent telling me, you've got to do one. We just signed a deal. But no, this was my choice. I wanted to do one. I think, my career's probably split opinion, more so than most other careers, I guess. And it's also, I get so many people stopping me in the street saying, asking me questions. And when I explain things, they're open-mouthed. They're like, you need to say that. You need to tell people what happened from Madrid to Liverpool or Newcastle or Manchester. Say all these things and because you're misunderstood out there. And the amount of people that said it, and I thought, right, well, I'm going to say it then once and for all. I'll just get it out there. It's been therapeutic. It's off my chest now, and now I can live happily ever after, so to speak.
The book has obviously made plenty of headlines. You're very honest about your relationship with Alan Shearer, which has probably been the main talking point. You're very open as well about difficulties in your personal life after retirement. My sense from reading the book was that, as you sort of touched on there, when you were a player, you're a very private person. It seemed as though you were very single-minded towards your career, towards scoring goals, and also towards providing a pretty good life for your family. And then you retire, and actually people don't know the real Michael Owen. They sort of have a perception. They never got to know the real you.
Yeah.
So actually, here was a good opportunity to say, I'm not that person. Actually, I'm not that quiet. Actually, I'm far more interesting. A lot more going on than anybody actually realised.
Well, that's definitely the case. But I can see why it happened and where it happened. I mean, you scratch your head, there's probably nobody in the world that had an introduction to football. I mean, Golden Boot winner at 17, coming back from the World Cup having scored a couple of goals, but especially a famous goal at 18, and Golden Boot winner again at 18. Nobody can sort of tell me, right, when I did this is what you've got to do. I mean, it just never happened to anyone. I was having to cope with so much so early. So I had to put things in place straight away. I had to have an advisor that I totally trusted. I had to have a mum that, right, we'll look after all your, you just focus on your football. You're only a kid still, just focus on your football. We'll do all the work around it. So, of course, and don't get me wrong, my agent was great. I loved him, he advised me well. But in giving all of that, power to other people in a way, I believe, and sort of later on in my life, it just felt like everybody's got me down as this angel, this whiter than white person that's never made a mistake and doesn't drink alcohol and has never been out and never done anything wrong. And
the character never developed really past that
and
quiet 17-year-old.
And my teammates used to laugh at me all the time saying, you are living a total, everybody must be totally blagged basically in the outside world, because they would see how fun I was or how much mischief I got up to, or you see me drunk or whatever it might be, but no one ever got to see that. And I suppose that's fine, I'm not that bothered, but now it's sort of almost quite a revelation. Now people see I have actually got an opinion and I'm quite outspoken. And
I guess you've seen the alternative though, because of the exact same generation was David Beckham, who went a totally different route and did go down the superstardom route and was incredibly open. There was no private life, it seemed, for David Beckham. His entire existence has been public property. And there probably was no middle ground. You either had to go your route or his route.
Yeah, definitely.
And now, I'm imagining you're quite happy you went your route.
Well, I am, yeah, and the phrase fair game comes to mind, because that's exactly what the press viewed it as then. If you were going to go and open and sell your soul maybe in a newspaper or in a magazine and things like that, then right, it's fair game. You are obviously then caught in publicity. If you didn't, then I think there was a bit of respect there with the press and they would almost leave you alone. They had to talk about you, but they would leave your private life to be. And I guess I definitely went down that route. So from that point of view, and also David was probably the perfect foil from that. He took the attention off everybody. The papers were just front page, back page, everything, David Beckham for a few years. And the rest of us could just get along and tootle along nicely and weren't really making any headlines.
Did that frustrate you during his career? You obviously talked during your book about the sending off, how he let everybody down in the team, but also just reading about the different World Cups and your different interactions with him, that in 2002, in 98 even, he comes back and he's the story, despite you scoring the wonder goal. He's the story. 2002 again, the injury, he's the story. Was part of you ever, anyway, jealous of that public perception of him, that he was that superstar and that sometimes you faded into the background?
No, not at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I think a lot of us were reasonably pleased because there was enough attention on the England team anyway with this supposed golden generation, and obviously David took the limelight away from everybody. But I think as well, he was obviously a very good footballer, but we all know as well that the whole reason why his star shined so brightly, and that was, what he did off the pitch. His wife, his kids, everybody was sort of infatuated with the whole Beckham story at the time. So no, it was fine. He was a really important player in the England team, but there were other players that you couldn't be without as well. So it wasn't, it wasn't. So
like
there was
no part of when he wasn't there that the rest of the group were going, you know what, this is the golden generation, as it was called. Yet still, there's one star that seems to be shining a bit brighter than everybody else.
Yeah, but he was shining brighter than everybody else off the pitch, no question. On the pitch, he was certainly a very important player, but we still had other world-class players, Scholeses and Gerrards and Lampards and Rio Ferdinands and all these players. We were a top team, so yes, he had some great moments. Of course, in qualifying against Greece, his performance was outstanding, but, there was other great performances from other people around then, and of course he, as I say, I guess the infatuation with him was, yes, he was a very good footballer, but it was also off the pitch as well.
The book starts right at the beginning. In fact, your dad writes the first foreword in the book. And I never realised until reading this that you had a tough enough childhood, that money wasn't particularly plentiful in the own household. You talk about the bailiffs arriving at the door.
Yeah, well, we always had people sort of, mortgage people and whatever knocking and, when are we going to get payment and things like that. And it's not obviously nice, but it almost worked in our favour in many ways. My dad was very, not carefree, but he didn't really lose sleep over. He would always think tomorrow will be all right. My mum was more of a worrier. And no question, throughout my childhood, I knew that I was the way out for my parents and for us to be able to, clear out all those worries and that
didn't seem to burden you.
No, it was great. It was just a lovely feeling. It continues. It's the same feeling as playing as a centre forward and everybody saying, "Come on, we need you today. We need you, our star man to score a goal or whatever." Being looked upon as a hope, our main hope, our key to victory, things like that was just, that's all I needed to feel important, to feel special. Right, I can get out there and, if there was nothing on it, if no one was bothered, then I wouldn't. I think it's much harder for people. But that pressure, some people curl under pressure, I guess. But that pressure was just such an inspiration and such a challenge for me to take on.
Yeah, you do seem absolutely bulletproof when you're in those formative years. There's a quote that you come to the realisation that you're exceptional at something. That feeling makes your whole life better. When is that moment? Are there specific moments you can look back on during your formative years that you go, I changed because of that?
Well, first of all, happenings make you feel like that. You can't just feel invincible if nothing happens. But I look back now and think, right, what were my 15 biggest games I ever played in? I'd say I played in 6 cup finals. I won every one. I scored in every one bar one, but got brought down for the penalty and assisted in the UEFA Cup final. I played in El Clasico derby, Merseyside derby, Manchester derby, Tyne and Weird. I scored in every one. Played in quarter-final for England, World Cups and European Championships, scored in both of them. So all the big games, I pride myself on doing it at the biggest and the highest level. And the bigger the game, I felt as if the better the performance. So it's almost a question. It's like chicken and egg. How do you have this opinion of yourself, and then your football follows, so you're almost deluded and think you're 10% better than you are, and that actually catches up? Or are you actually very good, and then that means you're confident, because it's easy to be confident, because if you're better than everyone else at the time, then it's easy to be confident, isn't it? So it's hard to know which one came first. I think I've naturally got a lot of self-belief because of what I was as a young kid and being better than a lot of the other kids. But then also, I think I've certainly got an air about me that's a little bit delusional as well. And I think I'm a bit better.
Mindset. Reading it, I was thinking of that famous Jack Nicklaus line where he's at a press conference talking about never missing a putt on the final hole from inside 3 feet, and the reporter goes, I remember you seeing you missing a putt from inside 3 feet, and he goes, I've never missed a putt from inside 3 feet.
Exactly. I use a swear word in my book, but it's a something filter, and I definitely have got a great way of blanking out. I mean, I could be at Anfield as an 18-year-old and someone passed me the ball after, in the warm-up, and it bounced off my knee, and I'd be thinking, that is so good. I've got my bad touch out the way. I'm going to be man of the match. I'm going to score a hat-trick. And if I kill the ball dead, I'd be thinking, my touch is on fire. I'm going to be man of the match. I'm going to score a hat-trick. I mean, no matter what you threw at me, that's how I felt. And I still remain like that to this day. You talk about golf, my mate's a pro golfer, he's off scratch. I've played him about 200 times. I've never, ever, ever beat him. If I play tomorrow, I stand on that tee and I swear to you, I think I'm going to beat him. I'm not like I'm like, well, last time he had a lucky bounce and I was a bit on, and I convince myself that I'm better than him. And of course I'm not.
And what's your mindset when it doesn't happen, though?
Well, I don't know. It's, I'll convince myself that he was lucky or I was unlucky or something. I don't know, but I'll always come back thinking I can beat him next time.
That positive mindset, a lot of it probably does come from your dad. You mentioned it there. You very much looked on the bright side of things. Terry comes across a really good character during this. Terry Two Jags, he ends up being called. I do love the story, though, of when you're at Newcastle and your wife is moving back home because the kids are starting school, and somehow your dad just goes, ups and leaves your mother for a while and says, I'm going to go live with Michael, and basically pretends he's 22 again.
Oh, exactly. My dad loves it, yeah. In fact, I think my mum was buzzing as well to get rid of him.
A bit of free time.
Yeah.
He enjoyed your success.
We had a right laugh, yeah. We loved it. Living up there together. And this is the myth about me, flying home every 2 minutes and hating this and hating that. We had a great laugh up there. My dad was one of the locals. He'd be doing his pub crawl until I got back home. He'd cook dinner and then we'd go out to a pub ourselves, and that, it was great. But my dad was, he lived it. He loved it, and he absolutely lived my career. Never missed a game, and we had some wonderful times together.
Gary Neville was on with us last week, and he was talking about the Liverpool-Manchester United rivalry of that time, and he was talking about the culture that was in Liverpool and maybe a drinking culture that was there at the time of 6-7 pints 2-3 times a week, that this was the type of thing that ultimately costs you a league title and why United were so successful. You're going into that culture as a 17-year-old. There's card schools, there's a lot of gambling. You talk about Ronnie Moran pulling up the bus and getting out and ordering 25 fish and chips. Do you look back now and think, if there was a different culture at that stage, how your club career could have been different at Liverpool?
Well, it changed very quickly under Gerard Houllier. That was definitely what happened. When I got into the team, Roy Evans was the manager. That's just what happened for the previous couple of decades, I suspect. And I knew nothing else, no different to that. But there was only a season or so under Roy Evans, and then Gerard Houllier. And I think Gerard Houllier was come to probably drag the team into the new century, let's say.
Were you delighted when Gerard Houllier came in that was slowly pushed out?
Well, I didn't think anything was bad in the first place. I was sort of... The only thing I thought was we were starting to watch Arsenal at the time, and Arsene Wenger had taken over, and we were seeing these players that never ever got injured. They seemed faster than us. They seemed like they could run forever, and you were just thinking, what are these on? Either their diet or they're on something. You can't physically do this, and I think that's when Gerard Houllier came in and he really improved and I can't say I liked it. I was used to what we used to do, having a game of cards on the back, people having a couple of cans of lager on the way home, fish and chips on the way home and all that. It was like, this is the life. But that all quickly stopped and it became very regimented after that.
Your confidence shines through even from that early age, particularly with England, and the second you make your England debut, like, there's no resting on your laurels, it feels. At any stage, you're always wondering what's next. Like, you're pissed off when you're coming off early against Romania, rather than thinking, I'm a teenager, I'm just blessed to be here. All building up to that night against Argentina. What's your memory of that goal? Like, do you have a very specific memories of every game of your career, of all your major goals, or are there some that stand out from others?
Well, I'm not good at remembering games and goals. I mean, I don't even know how many goals I scored in my career, but I reckon I remember about 20% of them. But of course, the big ones, you remember, you've seen millions of times back on television. I couldn't really remember. I knew I scored a very good goal. I couldn't really remember how many people I beat, and I remember where the ball went. I remember sort of taking my first touch, but it's only until you see it afterwards. And the reaction on everyone's face. I always remember Paul Merson coming up to me and he's almost like, have you seen what did you, and he couldn't even talk. He was like, have you seen that goal you just scored, type of thing. And it was brilliant. I mean, I just couldn't wait to get home to watch it again, I suppose. But all those big goals, you need to watch them again to just realise, because your body goes into a sort of a different world. You know, the adrenaline's coursing through your veins, and you really do need to just check out how it happened. Because
you talk in the book about honing your craft at times, and looking back when you were a kid and the different things you practiced, and you didn't really like going around goalkeepers, but you loved that dinked finish, and there you were at 18, the biggest game of your career, sort of going with that nice little dinked finish. Yeah, well, this is the thing about goal scorers, I think. A lot of people, if you're in the crowd and you're watching a game of football, the natural thing to do when something is getting close to a goal, you sort of tense up, you take a deep breath, you get a bit, nervous and shy or whatever you get. But for me, as a centre forward, as a goal scorer, all of those traits, I've got to do the opposite. You've got to go colder, you've got to go cool, you've got to think in a split second, what is the best chance I've got of scoring this goal? And having that experience of knowing my game, knowing what feels more comfortable, knowing where goalkeepers tend to dive or what they're going to do, knowing that I don't particularly like certain finishes and I like others, all that just comes together. But it's not planned, it just happens, it's split second stuff, reaction, and everything came together on that goal. But I wouldn't say it was one goal that it was out of character. I mean, I scored exactly the same goal as that about 2 years earlier for England schoolboys. 2 games after that game, I played away at Newcastle, scored a hat-trick, and my last goal was pretty similar. It was just, I was just doing that at that time. I was capable of doing it. Were you ever happy coming off the pitch if you hadn't scored a goal? Not 100%. No, I don't think you can be. And you know what? A load of people say, don't they, all the time, centre forwards, if they get beat but they score, they're happy. I mean, it's not strictly true, but there is a certain amount of truth in it. It's kind of changed now, though. There are different types of forwards who work hard for the team. Exactly. But if you do feel like that, if you feel happy all the time, and when everyone's striving for perfection, or I know I was all the time, and if most of the things went right, if you win, if you nicked a goal, if everything was fine, then of course you would come home and you'd be happy with your lot. But if you scored and you didn't win, no, not everything's perfect. If you win and you didn't score, you're happy enough, but come on, because that's your job, that's like what you have to do. Because I was looking back, and like the first thing that almost comes up on YouTube is that famous video with Neville Southall where you're smashing shots past this kid in some sort of a promotional... soccer skills. And Neville Southall goes, he's 13. Yeah. But you're just smashing shots past them. You don't care less. No, I mean, again, I'd just come back from the World Cup and I had to do a skills video. And, I wouldn't done any lessons in how to speak or go on in front of the camera and act and do all these things. So they were asking me to, come on, you've got to show a bit more enthusiasm and things like that. So I just took it as a challenge, right? I've just got to score a goal and almost celebrate it like I was. So yeah, there was no holding back. I had to. Do you look back now and go, oh? Yeah, I mean, on Twitter, it's red hot for it. Every time I tweet something, I get a whole wave of people saying, doesn't matter what I've said, it's just they put, come on, he's only 13. Yeah. I didn't realise that, obviously, the injury problems are well documented, but that the injury in 1999, the one you pick up against Leeds, the hamstring injury, just how serious that was at the time. You talk about you had a third less power in your right leg after that. Like, at that young an age, to have that sort of an issue hanging over you consistently, like, did it affect you mentally at all? That you were never quite 100% again?
Well, when I came back, I thought I was still reasonably quick, but I knew it would sort of taken its toll. I knew it was a serious injury. I didn't know the extent of what it was going to, leave me with for the rest of my career. And, of course, I went on to go and win the Ballon d'Or and win 5 trophies in a couple of years later. So, it was one of those that just gradually sapped your speed. And when you're young, you're pliable, you're quick, everything. It doesn't matter what you do, you're bendy, you can't really get injured so much. So I still had muscles that were firing fast and I could still sprint quickly, but of course later on in my career that would just slow down as with age and everything else, and then you've got a lack of power being generated in one of your legs. And then there's an imbalance as well. You've got a lot of power coming from one leg and the other one is struggling to... So then you start shearing and getting groin problems and getting other injuries, and it all is conducive to then just slowing down, because if I don't sprint at my absolute maximum, I'm fine. I'm not going to get injured.
When were you at your absolute quickest?
18, 19. Yeah, I mean, World Cup in 98. In and around that time, I would have been at my absolute quickest, yeah.
And when you're at that age then and you pick up the injury, are you always expecting to get back to that level?
I didn't know the severity of it. I knew that I had a bad injury, and it was, the problem was, when I came back, obviously there was an imbalance. There was a bit of a dispute at the time with physio and manager and things like that. The physio left, so I was sort of left alone for a while and didn't really rehab it as strong as I would have liked. So then again, there was an imbalance. So then when I was coming back, I was getting little niggles on either side, because there was, the distribution of power coming through my legs was different. So then, but once then I went on a real strengthening program, I was fine. When I really got my right leg back up to speed with my other leg, it was great for a number of years. But then again, I did my knee afterwards and came back, and you're getting older and things like that, and then it just starts coming back, and I start getting problems in other muscles then. And
obviously, as you mentioned, like, you're still well enough to go on and win the Ballon d'Or in 2001 and have that miraculous season with Liverpool. Incredible to think that you didn't actually start or play in the League Cup final at that stage. You're behind Emile Heskey in the pecking order. How do you accept that at the time? Well, I didn't enjoy it. I mean, that season I finished top scorer. I think it was 28 goals, and of course there was the FA Cup final, the UEFA Cup final that I played in. But yeah, you're right. The I think it was the Carling Cup at the time. Anyway, the League Cup, it was Robbie Fowler and Emile Heskey started. Gerard Houllier was great for, coming up to you and sort of softening the blow. So he'd always come up to you and say, right, listen, I'm not starting you in this one, but be ready. I'm sure you'll come off the bench, and don't worry, you're going to be starting in the FA Cup. He would give you... Because I was wondering that in the book, you don't really touch on it. I was wondering whether throwing toys out of the pram situations that weren't mentioned. No, it's not really my style to do that. I know a lot of people go and throw their medal away and things like that out in a huff. If they didn't start. And of course, I was disappointed not to start. I was gutted, actually. But I mean, we had some other great strikers. There was no problems there. But you just want to be part of it, don't you? And I was a huge part of it that season. As I say, the top scorer and winning all those trophies. But the one blip, let's say, was, as you say, not starting in the League Cup final. It didn't affect that insane belief that you had anyways, because the way you talk about that FA Cup final was... Like, people remember it now as the Michael Owen final against Arsenal in the sunshine in Cardiff in 2001. Like, you seemed to sense beforehand that this was going to be your day. Well, I went into the game scoring loads of goals. I think I just scored a couple against Chelsea, and I mean, I was flying at the time. And I just knew going into the game that if I had a chance, I was in a great position to be scoring mentally and physically. Everything was perfect. So, but I just remember about the day, the heat, the quality of the opposition. I mean, Arsenal were sort of invincibles in and around that time. They were such a good team. And I just remember
you almost liken it to a heavyweight fight when someone's getting battered on the ropes the whole time, but they're still not down, and then one punch and bang, it's sort of all in the balance again. And you could just feel Arsenal, as soon as that chance fell and I scored it, you could just feel everything sapped from them. And I've never felt it as much as I've always been confident, had loads of self-belief. I've never felt a knowing before like that. When I'm jogging back to the halfway line and I remember looking up at the scoreboard thinking, how long have I got? It's just a question of, can I score in the 90 minutes, in the remaining sort of few minutes that are left, or am I going to have to wait for extra time to beat them? But there was no question.
That's literally the only time you've had that feeling in your career.
I felt confident before. I felt, come on, I'm definitely going to give me the ball, I'll score. I've loads of times felt like that. Top of the world, I'm going to score a hat-trick all the time. I've felt like that a lot, but I've never felt like I did in that. Just jogging back, I was just thinking, it's just a matter of time. They've gone. I'm now on top of the world type of thing, feeling great, and it was just a matter of when I could score the second.
The departure from Liverpool, did you misjudge Rafa Benitez? He's obviously naturally a quite standoffish person. He's not very tactile. He doesn't put arms around the shoulder. That when he came in, maybe you didn't get the sense that you were as wanted as, well, he was never going to tell you that you were that wanted. Like, when you look back now, do you think that was just his character?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's definitely his character. I mean, listen, Stevie G and Cara basically won the Champions League for him, and I don't think he's ever said well done or patted them on the back. That's just his character. So maybe right at the start, I remember pre-season, we'd gone to America, the Euros had finished, Rafa takes over, we go to pre-season, training away. Anyway, we're playing the game against Celtic, and I come off and I thought, oh God, I've played well there. I've impressed the new gaffer. I chipped the keeper, I think I scored one. I only played all the players played half a game, but I chipped the keeper, my link-up play was great, and I just thought, I've definitely impressed the gaffer there. And I remember coming off the pitch and he just came over to me and said, right, you're doing too much of this, too little of that. I want you doing this more and that more and getting in behind a bit more and all these things. And I was just like, right, okay. I got back into my room. What about the goal? I got back into my room and said to Cara, you want to listen to this? I mean, probably one of the best performances I've ever put in. And he's literally just caned me there after the game saying, I'm not doing enough of this and I need to do more of that. And so you're right, he had a very strange way of interacting with people. It's obviously worked for him, over time. And did I misjudge it? Probably. I've probably never seen anything like it again. And nor of the lads that stayed there. But I don't think that was anything to do with me, with me
going to Real Madrid. The unveiling, which you talk about, obviously everybody's very aware of the unveilings at Real Madrid. They put the player right in the middle of the pitch. There's 50, 60,000 people there, and you got to do a few little tricks. How did that go for you?
It didn't. I was, as I was flying over actually to Madrid to sign, it just came over me thinking, oh no, I've got to do that thing where they parade the players in front of people and you've got to do all those tricks. Now, when I was a kid, if I had half an hour in the garden, there's no chance I was trying to beat my record of keepy uppies or do round the worlds or anything else like that. It was all about how close could I curl it into the garage door to hit the top corner. It was like goal scoring. No skills, no
rainbow flicks.
No. Certainly the last thing I was going to do is become a performance seal on the... So, okay, I can keep the ball up, 100 times, 200 times, things like that, but it's very like, kick it up. There's no fancy stuff. It was all about scoring goals and taking penalties and things like that. So as soon as I realised, oh no, I've got to do that, and you see all these fancy players doing all these things, and I thought, well, I can't just keep the ball up. It'll look as if I've got no skill. So
you're coming in, they've had summer after summer, Zidane, Figo, Beckham, McManaman, Ronaldo, and now it's Michael Owen's turn.
It's my turn. And I thought there's no point trying to get one over on them and try anything. If I drop the ball, it'll look embarrassing. So I just thought, right, I'm not going to do it. And as soon as they throw a ball out at me, they threw a ball at me as if to do it. I picked it up and I just went bump and volleyed it into the crowd, give them all the thumbs up, someone's got a souvenir. So they threw another one expecting me to keep the ball up again. So I just put the ball under my arm, smiled for all the cameras, put it in front of me, crouched down, put it down, just give them a couple of different shots of me holding the ball in my kit. and then again picked it up and went bang and volleyed it to the back of the stadium again. So no, I was in a bit of a panic about doing that.
What a ridiculous Real Madrid squad, though, that you're going into with Ronaldo, Zidane, Raúl, Roberto Carlos. What were you thinking joining Madrid of what it was going to do for your career? Were you thinking this will bring you back to Ballon d'Or type levels, that you'd be winning Champions Leagues?
I didn't really think about anything like that. I just thought this is amazing. I'm an amazing team already in Liverpool, but we weren't winning the league. We weren't, winning in the Champions League at the time. Of course, they went on to win it the next season. But I just thought this is a great career opportunity. Experience something different. These players that you've mentioned, wow! I mean, it'd be brilliant playing alongside them. I just saw it as a sort of a new chapter in my career to still play in the top level and enjoy it in a different way.
You were obviously one of the great strikers. People will put Ronaldo as possibly the greatest out-and-out striker. Certainly it has been in modern times.
Yeah.
Having been around him, and I think you ended up being quite friendly with him as well.
Yeah.
Like, how good was he? Watching him on the training ground, watching him on the pitch, like, how highly would you rate him?
Well, we said before about, me and my career having it being injured and the pain of it, second half of your career, he was exactly the same. I mean, it must have been torture for him mentally, I guess, to be so good and then to be at the end of his career still able to play and be main striker in Real Madrid, but he must have known he could give so much more. I mean, at the end of his career, he was toe poking most things because he couldn't hardly bend his knee. He'd had that much knee surgery and things like that. But even that just was, when he ran at you, when he ran at players with that pace and he did that step over, it was just mind-blowing how no defender in the world could stop him. As I said, it was a shame that, like everybody, absolutely everybody regresses to a certain extent towards the end of your career. And I saw him right at the end. So, but I mean, still, what I saw was breathtaking. And what you've got to say as well when you're talking about him, what a fella. Nicest man in the world.
Well, Steve McManaman was over doing a show with us a few months ago, and he was telling the story of one of the parties after maybe they won the Champions League. They were quite legendary.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was legendary at throwing parties. Do you know what? Brazilian people in general, all the people that I've worked with, played with quite a few Brazilian people, they're all great lads. They're all absolute, would do anything for you, heart of gold, love to party, love to have a drink, and yeah, they're I wouldn't say they're very similar to us Brits, but they are similar. They're I had some great times with him.
You talk in depth about Newcastle and the return to Newcastle and how you could have gone to Liverpool, and in fact the whole way through there was a release clause there that if Liverpool had matched it, Newcastle would have had to release you back to Liverpool, and it never quite happened. Like, Graham Souness was interested throughout, even when you were at Real Madrid, was calling you all the time. Like, when you look back now on that 3-4 year spell at Newcastle, like, are there many fond memories?
Yeah, there are. Certainly early doors, it was great. I've got loads of fond memories. Signing was amazing. Having so many people turn up and feeling, that, you're
still the man.
Yeah, that you're important, that you're going to have an enjoyable career. Obviously, playing alongside Alan was going to be great. There was just a buzz about the city. So that was great. We started off, I think I signed and we played 4 or 5 games of the season. We were bottom of the league, so it was like, come on, we need to start getting some points. And then between signing in September and New Year's Eve, we were flying. I mean, me and Alan were scoring loads of goals. We'd flown up the league table. We were into the top half.
And you were very close at that stage. Were you living with him?
Yeah, I stayed at his house for a while I was house hunting. We played golf most weeks, strikers against goalkeepers, me and Alan against Steve Harper and Shay Given. We were very close, and that was all great. We scored loads of goals, and then I broke my foot playing for Newcastle in the on White Hart Lane on New Year's Eve, and of course I'm trying to go in where it hurts. Paul Robinson was the goalkeeper. He landed on my foot with his knee, and I heard a crack straight away, and anyway, broke my foot. So I was out for a good while and came back at the end of the season, played a couple of games, I think, 1 or 2 games, and then went away to the World Cup, and of course everyone knows did my knee, so that was a year out. So I was a year and a half out at Newcastle, and for some reason, despite having an amazing start and loving it up there and all the rest of it, that 18 months out almost turned everything sour. Now, I don't know whether it was a lack of communication to the fans, whether I should have done more interviews or something and said I'm trying my best to get back or whatever, I don't know. But I was trying my hardest to get back, and I even employed my own personal physio to get back. Even
well, it's a very Newcastle story, particularly when you look at the way the club has been run now. Like, you're fit and available pretty much to come back, but because of the insurance policy that's there, whereby you're on such a big wage, which you admit yourself, I think you're probably the third highest paid player in the league at the time on 120 grand a week, that Freddie Shepherd is getting your wages covered while you're out injured, and if you come back, suddenly Newcastle need to start paying you again. So actually, they delay your return.
Well, it's quite ironic, isn't it? Yeah, it is ironic. I mean, at the end of the day, when I was fit to play, I played. But Freddie Shepherd, he did ask me, or he did tell me, to go and do something, go and swear a word, hide in the toilets. That's all he's asking me to do, so to speak, when the Sky cameras were there to watch a training session. And, that was obviously, having been out for 18 months, or near as damn it, it was hard to take, but anyway, it was fine. It was brushed over in a few days, and I was back training and made my return and came back. And the only sad thing was, soon after I was playing in a game away at Watford and then got a smash on my jaw, and by one of my own players. I just ran into him. We weren't looking at each other, and I think I hit his shoulder, and I got carried off unconscious. I was knocked out, and sadly later on that night, I was watching Match of the Day. I'd come round and I was watching Match of the Day, and I heard a section of the Newcastle fans singing "What a Waste of Money" or something like that. And that, having had that year and worked so hard to get back, and bearing in mind the previous few months of signing and doing as well as I did do, to hear that, having, thought, I don't know what I've done wrong here, was... And in my mind, it was almost unforgivable. I thought, right, that's the way you think, type of thing. And we probably never got on a good footing after that. Keegan came in, scored loads of goals. No one said anything to me negatively in the street or anything else like that. But I'd gone from being the hero to just another player.
And did any part of that then figure the year later, again on the final day of the season, when Alan Shearer's desperate for you to play? You're not in a particularly good way injury-wise. You can maybe play 10, 15 minutes, I think, is your ideal scenario on the final day of the season. If they desperately need a goal to stay up, you'll come on. But you're not fit enough, you don't feel, to play the full 90 minutes. Is any part of you thinking, screw 'em, I'm not ruining my body for this crowd? Not
at all, but, I understand your question, but no, I've never... The only thing I've ever wanted to do is play football. We're born to do that. We're born to, be competitive, to want to win things, to, if I'm playing snakes and ladders with my kids now, if they lose, they're fuming, they run upstairs, and that's that. And I'm the same. I just wanted to win, I wanted to play, I was so hungry to score goals. But in that particular game, I'd suffered a groin injury in the lead up to it. I was, didn't think I was fit. We went out day before the game to try to just push it. I got to about 70%, and if I'd gone any faster, I know it would have gone again. And I said to Alan at the time, listen, we can try training tomorrow, but I know my body. Listen, I've had 25 muscle pulls. I know it more better than any physio or doctor or anything. It feels like it's going to go any minute now. I'll start, no problem at all. If I were you, I'd chuck me on the bench and just, if we need a goal, just throw me on with 15 minutes to go, and I'll try to nick one. But I don't feel as if I'm fit. I'll let you down. Would that have been
a normal enough conversation that you would have had with managers down the years?
Yeah, but normally you wouldn't even consider it. The physio would say to the manager, listen, he's not fit. He maybe next week. He's probably about 5-6 days away from fully training, so maybe and it would just, why would you risk for one game when you could be out for another 6 weeks? So, but as it was the last game of the season, it was a conversation to be had. Listen, what are we losing by throwing you on and you're pulling your groin again, and okay, we might have to bring you back off, but it's worth the risk. And it absolutely was worth the risk, and I was willing to risk myself. But for some reason, Alan took it, or thought, or after the game thought that it was that I didn't really want to put my body at risk in that last game, and that I was,
saving yourself for a new contract somewhere
exactly,
else.
Which of course it's ridiculous when you, in my eyes, it might not be in other people's, but as I say, I've had 25 muscle injuries. I've never bottled a game in my life. I mean, I've listed the games that I've played and scored in and whatever. I'm certainly not going to bottle it against Aston Villa. I mean, it would have been unbelievable to have scored a goal to save the club and to be a hero and everything else. But as I say, I had a problem at the time, and I didn't feel as if I should start. But I would have started if he had asked me.
And considering you were so friendly before that and had so much shared history, have you ever sat in a room and said, let's just have this out?
No, and it was a long time after it. I mean, I subsequently left on a Bosman, signed for Manchester United, and it was only when I was with a mutual friend and he came up in conversation, I said, oh God, I must call Alan, and he said, no, I wouldn't bother if I were you. I was, why, and whatever, and then it transpired what he was thinking, and I just couldn't believe it. Absolutely couldn't believe it. This is like 6 months, a year after, and I couldn't believe what my mate was telling me, a mutual friend. So I just sort of accepted it. He's very strong personality, as I am, probably both quite stubborn in our ways. And I know if we sat down and had a conversation, we would go around in circles and all we'd do is agree to disagree. Because there's no way there's any other story that's true apart from what I'm saying. He might think that, he might have managed to soften the blow of not being manager for Newcastle, of being relegated, by blaming other people, me included. I don't know whether that was it. Possibly, probably. But I don't feel like I want to be the scapegoat to anybody when I've never, ever bottled a game in my life, and my stats and my big game appearances and performances would back that up.
There's obviously been a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter over the last few weeks since the book came out, and he had some comments about the wage you were being paid, and again, probably that you should have gone out and played. Like, how does that sit with you, that so many people are talking about this again, that it is quite public, that instead of, I don't know, Alan Shearer texting you or you texting him back and sorting this out privately, it does feel as though it's a public thing and it's going to be brought up consistently now over the next few years?
Well, I've not got any problem with it, really. I wrote a book and I've told people exactly what's happened throughout my career. Some people will be happy with it, some people will think it's really insightful, some people will be interested, some people will be disappointed that I've maybe had a pop at them. I don't know.
Have you had much feedback from people who you've spoken about in the book?
Well,
from Shearer?
I think more so there's been loads of surprise in terms of, wow, I thought you two were mates. I can't believe you haven't spoken to each other for so many years. That's probably the reaction to it. But, I've got no other... That's what happened. That's my side of the story, and that's disappointing that we're not mates anymore. I'm not sure. Listen, he lives at the other end of the country to me, so not sure, we'd be going out for a pint every night anyway, but we'd still be talking and texting each other and things like that. And it's disappointing that it's got to that. But as I say, I feel if it's his gripe with me as opposed to, the other way round, he's actually accusing me of something rather than me. And then the rubbish on Twitter, I mean, him bringing up money and things like that. I mean, I'm not even going to stoop to that.
Should though. Go on.
I mean, well, no, it's the easiest thing in the world, isn't it, to talk about money. But the most disappointing thing was not about him talking about my wage. I mean, geez, he was probably the most well-paid player of his generation, so that says it all, really. But the worst thing, in my opinion, is the sentence that he had almost retweeted. And I was saying at the time, I didn't enjoy the last 6 years of my career as much as the first 6 years of my career. And he stopped it there and then put a comment. If he had let the tape go, I would go on to say, because I was, not as fast as I was the first few, but he just said we could tell because, you didn't try or whatever, because you were on this money or whatever it was. And I just felt that, at least let the line or the sentence go in context of what I was trying to say, but he stopped it short to make it maximise the impact and then put a sly comment, so...
I guess, and listen, the Newcastle supporters as well as anybody, he's playing to the crowd there, because while the Newcastle supporters at the time, I'm sure, were delighted that they were paying one of their players and they loved the number 9 and they loved that iconic figure, there's also a sense in a city like Newcastle that you got to work bloody hard They want to see that you're grounded. And actually bringing that up, that maybe you took an easy option, is, in the eyes of Newcastle fans, the worst possible thing you can do.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, if you want to sort of be clever about what you write and things like that, then you could say that was the case. But, you know, I get that. I mean, I'm from near Liverpool. And my mum and dad are Scousers, and I know the value of money. I know what we didn't have as a kid, and all the rest of it. We're working class, so it's difficult talking about money in the public, because nobody wants to listen to that. I certainly wouldn't have when I was a kid. So that's fine, and that's how it is at the moment. As I say, we haven't spoken. I mean, I've got no problem if we did, and shaking his hand and saying hello. But as I say, I suspect if we did do that, it would be purely, we'd go round in circles and then we'd just agree to disagree again.
You mentioned those last few years of your career and joining Manchester United. You do end up with a bit of a Sophie's choice of Everton or Manchester United. No matter what happens, the Liverpool supporters aren't going to be happy.
Yeah.
It reads as though you really enjoyed those last few years at Manchester United, though, that Alex Ferguson sort of welcomed you into the club, made you an integral part of the club, even though you weren't playing every match, and you had the moments like the goal against Manchester City. And even thinking about that, like, that's 10 years on from when you talk about that injury against Leeds, that is you at your absolute peak, that even with all those problems, the broken foot, the cruciate, the consistent hamstring problems, 10 years after that, you're still scoring these memorable goals. You must take a lot of satisfaction of how those couple of years at United went. Yeah,
they did. I did. I mean, the first year was great. I mean, as you say, one of the first games of the season was that Manchester City game, so to straight away score that goal. And then we went into Europe and I scored a hat-trick in Wolfsburg. And then a few months later, it was the League Cup final. I scored in the final. We won 2-1 against Villa. So that first season, there was loads of highs. It was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. And, you know, there's no way on earth that I'm disappointed with you know, going there. In fact, it was a privilege to still be wanted by a manager at that age, to still think I had something to offer. I was playing alongside some players that I knew loads about anyway. I played alongside for England for many years. And, of course, staying at the top of your game, in a club that's in the Champions League with an unbelievable stadium. I'm living at home. It was a fantastic move. I mean, I couldn't believe my luck. Of course, when I left Newcastle, I tried to, you know, see if Liverpool were interested in re-signing me. But once Liverpool said no, I obviously had to go and find the best club possible. And, you know, you can't get much better than Manchester United after that.
It's obviously very much a football book, and there's so much of your career that so many football fans are interested in, and there's a lot of new insight in that. I feel maybe not another book completely, but there's a lot of interesting stuff in the post-career Michael Owen. You touch on it quite briefly, on the struggles of adjusting to retirement, the struggle of adjusting to being back home again. You're very honest. I've almost been jealous of the relationship between your wife Louise and your eldest daughter, which has obviously been forged over 15, 16 years of you being away all the time. It's what every father would want, that they have this strong bond. But suddenly you're back in the mix and you're wondering, where do I fit into all this?
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah, I was away all the time, and then you come back and to be honest, there was nothing to do with daughter, it's nothing to do with anything. It's to do with just an inner frustration. You don't feel as important as you once were. You know, when everyone used to, you know, roll out the red carpet, so to speak, you know, your wife would make you food because it was a big game, and, you know, right, we got to have pasta and do this and do that. It was almost like, right,
the entire family was built around you being the very best you could be.
Exactly, and everybody sacrificed themselves, and I'm so thankful for that. But of course, when you then retire, and it doesn't matter what time you eat or what you drink or when you go to bed or what, you know, all of a sudden you just find arguments. And I knew, whatever the argument was, I knew that I could hurt my wife and win the argument by saying the same old thing. And that was because they spent a lot of time with each other. My daughter, who I'm so proud of, my eldest, is, you know, she's riding at a great level at dressage. She rides for Great Britain. But I knew that meant so much to them that I could have a little pop at them saying, you're spending too much time, you know, what about the other 3 kids? Anything. I could say anything, and I know it would hurt them. And it was just my way of almost, you know, picking a fight. And, you know, I guess we all do it. You know, in relationships, we all do it, and I just didn't like myself for doing it.
You do the right thing. Like, you talk in the book that, like, it's probably heading towards divorce. It's like, but you ring the Manchester United team doctor, you sort of realise that this isn't healthy.
Yeah, I do, and you know, you're almost ashamed of what you're doing, but you just know, oh no, we're arguing again, and you sometimes picking arguments, and everyone does it, don't they? Everyone has an argument once in a while with their partner, but every time it would come to it, if she was beating me, I just knew how to win at the end of it, and I would just, you know, and I'd just bring out the normal card that won the argument, and it just dragged her down eventually. And she obviously thought I had a serious problem with her or with my eldest or whatever, which was just totally the opposite. It was the only thing I knew could provoke her into arguing, and I don't know why I wanted to argue for a period of time or what, but... And don't get me wrong, this wasn't a daily occurrence, it was like once every month or two, but it did happen for on three or four occasions, and I just got to a stage by, you know, thinking, why do I want to argue? Why am I poking her with a stick I haven't even got a problem with, and it was just a strange thing. And you know, when you speak to a professional about it, it's quite a natural reaction sometimes, and thankfully I did that.
And it's obviously quite common, I would imagine, as well, for so many sports people. We hear the difficulties that people have with adjusting back to real life. Like, you played for so many big clubs. Like, there is no real support network there, is there? Like, do you find when you left football, you're very much on your own?
In a way, I think you're on your own a lot of the time in football as well, and you know, I'm fiercely protective of my fellow pros because, you know, I think a lot of, you know, stick gets dished out to them for not much reason really. I mean, halfway through my career, I decided to set up a business that I enjoyed doing, that I knew would be, you know, in it for the long run. So I bought a farm as an investment. I turned it into Manor House Stables. Now I've got a lovely business going with a lot of great people. But halfway through my career, when I was doing it, people were saying, right, he's not interested in football anymore.
You're like Gareth Bale, the golfer.
Exactly. And when you're not, if you don't score one game, it's like, yeah, it's because he prefers golf than football now. And all these ridiculous accusations. If you don't do that, if I didn't set up Manor House Stables, how many people say dumb footballers? They retire and they don't know what to do next. They then end up going off the rails. They lose their money. They get divorced. They lose half the money again, and all, you know. So I do feel sorry for a lot of football. And then people target you with, oh, yeah, but how can you do that when you've earned this amount every week? But these are figures that only a few earn, for one. The big figures you only earn in the guts of your career. So, you know, maybe when you're 24, 25, 26, that's got to last. Then you retire at 33 in my case, but some people maybe 35. You've got like 50 odd years. You earn for 10, 12 years, and then you've got 50 odd years to live. Now, okay, for a lot of people, it's fantastic. But if you get divorced once, or if you have a slight vice, or if you know, have a bad investment or get bad advice, I can count, well, not on my two hands, the amount of people that are bankrupt and that have had problems since in my era that everybody thinks is earning a lot of money. So, you know, people get carried away with facts and figures and what they read and things, but it's also a bit of a strange world that you live in. I mean, I was a very wealthy person at 18. Yeah. And I was not even used to. I was still wearing my Umbro trackies. I didn't even know how to spend money at that age, and it's quite a strange world you get thrown into.
You've been brilliant with your time. Where you are now in your life, then, are you still looking for that buzz that football gave you? Have you been able to replace that buzz, or have you come to an acceptance that, you know what, I need to find a path in life that I can accept that buzz ain't ever going to be there again? Yeah,
I've accepted that I'll never get a buzz like scoring a goal. Watching your horses running and crossing the line in front is a nice little punch of the air moment. Watching your kids doing sport or being successful or just playing around is a great feeling, you know, things like that. But no, you've got to be realistic. That adrenaline that just bursts into your body, that courses through your veins, will never ever happen. But I've gotten used to it, and what am I now? It's 39, so 6 years I've retired, and my life, I wake up every morning, I've got something to do. If I'm not working on the telly, or I'm not doing my book, or not playing, going to my stables or something, I'm doing something every day, and that was my biggest fear when I retired, that I'd wake up and I'd be thinking, oh no, I've got nothing to do. So my life is sort of fulfilled. I've built a nice little career after football, and I'm enjoying it totally. Yeah,
and a brilliant career in football as well. So many brilliant memories. The book, Michael Owen, Reboot, very much worth a read. Thanks a lot for coming to the studio.
Brilliant, great to see you.